Turn this off. This is bad. Charlie, I just made you the co-host.
Okay. Trying to figure out how to change my name, but I haven't figured it out yet.
I think if you click on the little more button that comes up, if you hover over your name.
There it is.
Yep.
Yeah. It was there somewhere. How's everybody?
Good.
Good.
Doing well.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can't hear.
Hi, Eileen.
Oh, hi.
You hear us now?
I have to go on this because I lost my, it didn't come on the, we can't find it on the computer. This is my iPad. We lost the Zoom on the computer.
Oh, no, we didn't lose it.
You got it? Do you have it?
Yeah, because it was on that same.
That's what I was trying to. All right, wait, I'm gonna go on the computer because this is not good. Trying to tell you that. Go.
Chris, I really liked your fashion statement at that meeting yesterday.
Oh, did you like that?
Thought that was
Matching
really good.
mask.
I have never seen anyone with a matching blouse and mask before.
There's just the luck of the draw. I got a pack of masks from Old Navy and there was one with that same plaid as my blouse. So I said, I'm going for it.
I'm not on here.
Looks like you're on there twice, Eileen.
I don't know. Well, oh, there I am. But I'm sitting there. That's because I went on my iPad with it, so that must be anyway. Oh my God.
You all, we're waiting for Mahesh, I guess, and Diane and Toby. Has anyone heard anything about either of them?
I haven't. Let me double check my email to see.
Here comes.
Hi, Judy.
There's Toby.
Hello.
Okay.
Good evening.
Let's see. So
Diane and Mahesh, right?
nobody in the waiting room. Okay, well, it's 6 o'clock, so let us get started. I imagine that we'll hear from Mahesh shortly. I don't know about Diane, but otherwise, In lieu of calling the roll, I will say to anyone who is visiting us tonight that we have Eileen Struminski present, Linda Benz, Beth Gould, Toby Reed, Tricia Svensson, Judy Lusk, and myself, Charlie Oliver, present from the board, as well as Director Christine Johnson. Are there any staff members that you know that are going to join us, Chris?
No, I'm not aware of anybody.
Okay. All right. I'm required to read you this disclosure that pursuant to Governor Baker's orders in March of 2020, this meeting is going to be conducted via remote participation. There are no in-person members attending, so no public participation will be possible in person. But every effort is being made to ensure that the public can adequately access the virtual proceedings as provided for in the governor's order. Reminder to persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while it's in progress, they may do so by accessing the online link that we provided in the meeting notice, which was duly posted. And we will post a recording of this meeting on the city's website as soon as it's available. There, took care of that. Greetings, nice to see you all tonight. Let's get underway. First of all, before we do, please familiarize yourself with where your mute button is. And I think it's a courtesy to all if you can be muted unless you would like to speak up. And then by all means, make yourself known by waving your hands or just speaking up so that we know you want to be heard. First thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any corrections or additions to make to the minutes? Would anyone like a little time to have a quick look? Okay, then we will proceed. I have one correction on the second page under new business. This has to do with the application for E-rate financing. I want to strike out that last sentence so that it reads, the application for the E-rate discount is due in January, in the January to March window for services commencing in June. We apply in an indefinite date between January and mid-March. And that is for a discount for services that start July 1 or later in the next fiscal year. So we need to make that correction. Anything else? Okay, then I will state that the minutes are approved with that one correction, seeing as how we no longer actually have to vote that. That is Robert's Rules of Orders allow us to simply say approved with changes. Let's see, next thing on the agenda is the treasurer's report. I don't see Mahesh present, but I presume he will be along. But in the meantime, you've been sent, excuse me, a copy of the warrant number 5, dated November 10th. Excuse me. Does anyone have any questions about the warrant? Okay, the one item I would note is line 16, EBSCO Learning Express, which is essentially a database, correct, Chris? A bundle of services.
Yes, that's correct. I was muted.
And is that an annual license?
That's an annual license, yes.
Okay. Other than that, any questions on any items on the warrant? Okay, hearing none, let's look down at the receipts side or end of the page. And we have $10 we've received from Unique Management, a cash payment of a fine. So I would ask for a motion to accept. No, excuse me, let me go back on that. I won't ask for a motion at this point. You also have a copy of the budget. Are there any questions relating to the budget? Okay, we're just flying along here. So I will now ask for your vote to accept two things. The warrant number 5 in the amount of $5,573.20. And I will also ask for you in the same motion to accept $10 received from Unique Management. Can I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Linda. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please hold up your hand. All right, so we'll declare that that is approved. I have sent instructions to Rockland Trust tonight to transfer $5,573.20, the amount of the warrant, into our operating account, which is the procedure that we have adopted for this fiscal year. Just as a reminder, when we get to year end, if we have determined that we have excess cash in our checking account, we will send whatever we feel that excess is back to Rockland Trust for reinvestment. Okay, good. So let's move on to the director's report.
Okay, so I did send out a written director's report. I pretty much summed up kind of everything that's been happening over the last 30 days at the library. The building envelope, if you've driven by recently, you'll see that the fencing is up with the blue scrim, along with a big sign that lets the community know that the library is still open. They also have some porta-johns in the back, so we're going to be putting up some nice posters or something in the kids' room, because right now that's the first thing you see out the window is those 2 portable toilets. And I don't think anyone wants to look at that for the next 10 months. And there's also 2 big storage containers. One is behind that fencing and one is actually in the Balfour Riverwalk Park. So we have had the general contractor on site now for the last 2 or 3 weeks. We had expected the roof work to begin, but as you saw perhaps in my report, they had an outbreak of COVID at the roofing company. So until all those folks are out of quarantine and certified to come back to work, that part of the project won't be happening. But theoretically, weather permitting, it'll be started as soon as possible. They've selected the slate with approval of the submittal by the architect, and any of those type of historical materials, the architect has to approve that they meet the requirements, as well as any of the mechanicals. So the architect approved the slate, and that work they expect to start around Christmas, again, weather permitting. We did have a little bit of a hiccup where I was told a few weeks ago that we had plenty of time before we had to move out of the offices, and then all of a sudden it's like, can you be out next week? So we had started most of the process. So the room is basically set up as far as furniture and some of the carts and things that we ordered with money that was approved via this same building budget are coming in. It's just a matter of finally moving the computers and getting staff to working down there. And we were trying to hold off on that as long as possible because it's not a very convenient space for them. And they're going to have to be down in that space for at least 8 weeks, probably more. And with COVID, it's also a tight space. We did get an air purifier for them, but there's a lot of reasons not to move too early if we don't have to. So we thought that we were going to make that move within the next week or so, but by the time we finished our post-meeting walk through the building, the general contractor again said, well, the schedules may be changing away again. So don't make them move until you hear from me. So that's where we are. Tables are all set up, but we haven't actually had the folks move. The only other open issue on our end is that 2 of the 3 staff members that work up there full-time We'll be taking vacation between now and December because of the Thanksgiving holiday. So I did advise them to have all their stuff packed up and ready to go. They all have already taken home anything personal or anything like that, with the idea that potentially when they come back from their vacation, their new workspace may be in the other room. I don't think there's really anything more to report on unique management other than we did decide if we're finding folks that still haven't returned things from before the closing. At this point, they've received notices, so we'll probably take it to the next step with unique. And Katie was going to get back to me. I don't even know if we have anybody in that category, to be honest with you. So we'll have to find out. Let's see, the tech lab. So last week was, they do it all at once, all the E-rate trainings by USAC, the folks that run the program. So it was 9 hours of training over 3 days, 3 sessions over 3 days, but it was helpful, some repetition, but overall, I think I have a much clearer understanding of the process. I still think it might be useful to have a consultant because they will handhold us. And if anything goes wrong where we have to do a waiver or file an appeal or, you know, that's where I think, you know, the consultant would be earning their money. I mean, if everything went smoothly, you might be able to hobble through, but there's a lot of money on the table. So right now, I don't even know what her fee is. So we'll be able to make a better decision once we get that initial quote from Lisa Jeanette, I think is how you pronounce her name. And then depending on how high that quote is, if it's 5,000 or above, we would likely get at least 2 additional quotes and obviously references and the rest. So as Charlie mentioned, the funding can be secured as early as January and through March. We can actually put our 470 up at any time. Our 470 is basically our request for quotations, and the regulation is that it has to be up there for at least 28 days legally before we sign on with anyone who bids on it. We also have to at the same time abide by whatever the Massachusetts rules are for the open bidding process. So we'll be having Carol Brown in the process with us as we did last year. And for the category 2 work, which is all of the equipment and cabling, we did find out from all of the various sessions that even though the funding year doesn't begin to July 1, that type of work could actually start as early as April, which would be wonderful because that would mean as of July 1, we would be ready to have the higher speed internet connections set to go. So obviously a lot more to come on that. Grants, Chris has put together a nice grant application for STEAM kits over the summer. They did a lot of hard work, Megan and Crystal, putting together weekly different, not only arts and crafts, but STEM kits. A lot of that was funded by a Rotary grant. And we're hoping to do sort of an all-in-one 10 experiments or activities all in one package for families with the ability to get it out to 50 families. Via a grant from the Cultural Council. And Amy is looking into, we're just at the early stages of this grant, the LSTA Civic Engagement grant to help fund the Neighbors in Dialogue initiative that continues. And of course, the Big Read, we just finished one, but already the books are released for next year. So we're busy reading and listening, and we'll be meeting with the committee later this month to begin the planning for that application. Let me take a look. My printer wasn't working at home, so I have to read it off the screen here. We do have a new person on staff. I don't know if you've been in recently, Alyssa Silva. She works at the front desk. She's excellent, as mentioned. She came for another sales library, so she was basically fully trained for us. It was just a matter of understanding what our policies and procedures are and ways that might differ from New Bedford. She even has sort of the city library experience as far as dealing with sometimes difficult patrons. So she's fit right in a very difficult time, and we're happy to have her on board. In fact, the only reason that she's not still at New Bedford is that she did have to move to Providence, and New Bedford has residency requirement. So even her manager there had called Katie when she knew that Alyssa was applying for the job and said, you'd be silly not to hire her. Yeah, because really the only reason she's not at New Bedford is that she's not allowed legally to work at New Bedford, so she's working out fine. We're doing a lot of online virtual programming, which if you get our e-newsletters, I'm sure you're seeing the kids programming continues, and we booked Ted Reinstein for December 17th for a Zoom presentation. And COVID, there's really nothing that indicates a compelling factor that will be changing our operations in any way. I mean, if anything, things are pointing to perhaps pulling back. Not that we would make that decision independently, but if the city did or the state did. So we're not going to be adding any more hours at this time. We've also been in sort of a COVID roulette because every week there's somebody who has somebody who's being tested, a spouse or a child, and once we have that exposure, the mayor had basically indicated, if in doubt, have them stay out. And that's kind of what we're following. So if a family member is sick enough where they are being tested for COVID, until they get their results, we have our staff members stay home. So we've been doing pretty well with keeping COVID out of the building. We haven't gotten any calls from the health department saying you had an exposure. And the one member now who does have COVID, our first official staff member with COVID since we reopened, the timing of it, there really was no exposure to other staff. So unfortunately, though, that person has to stay out the full 14 days. And they're not feeling that well either. I mean, I don't think it's going to go, hopefully, not going to go too far south for them. But we do expect that they will be back after the 14 days. But you never know. You don't know what people's experiences are going to be. The Vox collection that you guys agreed to fund is now live and available for checkout. It's a fun new picture book collection where it actually has a little voice box right in the book that, as you turn the pages, reads the story. Brain Fuse, maybe we'll just talk about it since under new business. And just a reminder that the Friends won't be able to have their November book sale, but if you are a member of the Friends, please consider renewing your membership and stop at the Book Nook. You might find that perfect gift for the person you love during this season. And we are taking donations as well. We're asking folks to, as we had before COVID, to limit it to one bag or box of books at a time. But we do have the volunteers coming in every week, sorting those volunteers. And we do quarantine those, as we do with all of our returns, for 7 days before they even go to the next sorting process. So by the time they get out on the Book Nook shelves, they've been in the building for at least 10 days in most cases. And that is my report, unless you have questions for me.
Questions for Chris?
Judy? Oh, Charlie?
I do. Chris, could you explain a little bit more about under the grants where it says the list is much shorter this year? When the NEA recently announced the title selections, could you explain about that?
Sure. So every year, the big read, we have to choose, and let's see if I can actually screen share because I have the list up on my computer, but I haven't screen shared in a while. So let me see if I can figure it out. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this works. Share screen. Okay, so you see my email. I think it will come over here. There we go. Everyone can see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the list of books that we have to choose from. The only one on this list that was on the list last year is this American Sunrise, which is a book of poetry by Joy Harjo, who's the poet laureate of the United States. This is a graphic fiction. We have a couple of classics, and I'm sure you're familiar with Beloved, and The House on Mango Street is more of a teen title. So these are the books that we are now reading and or listening to and deciding among what would work best for the upcoming big read. I think if it's still down here, let me see this down. We may have already taken down the books from last year. Last year, we had a choice of 21 titles. And most of the titles were contemporary fiction. So this is a really big change from the last at least 5 years. When the program first came out about 15 years ago, it was geared towards, I don't want to say dead authors, but it was classics and dead authors. And then over the years, they've made it more and more contemporary. And now this year, I don't know if it has to do with changes at the federal government level, or if it has to do with COVID changes, but they really pulled back. We were very surprised because even when we chose Circe last year, which was wonderful, we're glad we chose it, but we were already thinking, oh, when next year we'll do, Lab Girl, or next year, all those books are gone. So we're kind of starting with a new selection here of things that have not been on the list with the exception of this one. And that's very unusual. Since, like I said, at least the last 10 years, what they've done is kept kind of a core set of titles and then added new titles. And last year they went crazy. They added all the extra titles because of the women's 100th anniversary of the vote. So they added more books written by female authors. And now this year they really pulled back. So it'll be interesting to see what the committee thinks. I mean, we do all have our different opinions. And we think, of course, what can we program around? What will people want to read potentially? What will people be willing to pick up to read? So it's a thin list. I'm
Great,
sure it'll be
thank
a
you.
wonderful program, but yeah, that's the list. We can't just pick any book we want. We have to pick one that they provide. And then as you can see right here, the application is due at the end of January. I can stop screen sharing now.
It's different.
Right? You see, those are very, very different titles.
Limited.
It's limited, yeah. If anybody has,
Did they let you know why it's so limited? Did they say anything?
they didn't make any announcement, which I thought was really unusual. I was debating about reaching out to Arts Midwest, but I would imagine that they're not really allowed to speak to it. I suspect it has something to do with changes at the federal government level, or, we had that odd situation a couple of years ago with Ron Carlson. And I got the feeling back then, just from I actually had some direct communication with the NEA, which we never have. We always deal only with Arts Midwest. I don't know. I think the woman that was running the programming, because I said to even everybody that Penguin almost had every book. Now this year you can see at least 2 Penguin titles, but the majority of them are not Penguin. And maybe someone just felt like there was a conflict of interest there. I'm speaking with no knowledge. I'm just spreading rumors basically.
Yeah,
But it just seems sort of,
just seems sort of odd.
yeah, it was such a drastic change from previous years that it, maybe that person stepped down from the position and they're going back to the more classic way the grant originally was run. A lot of things are changing with the with the current administration. We even got some, and I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but we did get some strong wording about not being allowed to use federal grant funds for anything that discusses the fact that there is inherent racism in the country. So we also then got a competing statement from ALA saying they do not agree with that decision and that ALA grants are not following those directives. So, I mean, it's just interesting times, as we say.
Oh my God.
That's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. Yeah.
Charles.
I see you.
Okay, I just got in. I forgot my phone at home and I'm borrowing somebody else's phone.
No problem. I'm glad you're here, and we'll get back to you in just a moment. Mahesh, is any more questions on the director's report or questions for Chris? Okay, Mahesh, we'll go back to the treasurer's report. We have approved the warrant number 5, and we have also requested a transfer of the funds in that amount, in the amount of the warrant from Rockland. So
Okay.
That's what we've accomplished so far. Anything more that you want to pass on to us?
Okay. The current balance in the Centon, our checking account is $7,940.55.
Okay. I guess I could also add that we are working currently with our independent accounting firm with respect to our 2 years worth of auditing that needs to be done. I use the term auditing advisedly because really what we have is called a review. It's a lot simpler than a full audit, but we have fiscal years 18 and 19 underway right now. We should have that done shortly. Mahesh doesn't know this yet, but he and I are going to be working with the accountant on revising our accounting system, computerizing it, perhaps putting using QuickBooks, and changing our chart of accounts somewhat so that when we go live with accounting in the next fiscal year, July 1st, it may have a different appearance. We haven't yet had discussions on this. I'm just formulating my thoughts on it right now to share with Mahesh and with the accountant, Mike Maloney. But once we have that finalized, we'll have a plan of action. And I think what it will mean is that our accounting process will become much simpler. It will be clearer, more comprehensive with respect to incorporating the endowments and our requirements to spend some of our endowment income. It will also incorporate our spending policy, which is different than the amount of interest and dividends we receive every year. So there's a lot of stuff on the table that we really kind of set aside for the last couple of years while John Carty was not in his best of health. John also did not use a computer. So I think that we're going to have a streamlined process in a number of areas, including budgeting as well. We're very conscious of whatever we do. Carol is willing to learn, she says, but I don't want to do anything that's going to increase her workload. So you should know anyway that is in the works, just at the beginning stages. And I look forward to collaborating with Mahesh and Mike Maloney on that project. Anything else you want to add?
And it'll be simpler to just pass it over to the next person coming in. It'll make it much easier.
Agreed. There are certain things that certain institutional knowledge, let's say, that I have with respect to restating the accounting to deal with our audit process. I don't even want to begin to discuss that with you. And certainly Mahesh does things a certain way now that I know we can improve upon, because that's what he inherited. So anyway, we're talking about that stuff at this point. Anything else you want to add, Mahesh?
No, all set. Thank you. Thank you for taking care of the.
Not a problem. Glad you're here. I also didn't acknowledge, I see Diane Mangiarotti there. Diane, are you hearing us?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So we are all present and accounted for, and that's what I like to see. All right. The next item on the agenda is the Technology Committee. We've kind of touched on that through the director's report. Don't have a lot to add to that. Do you, Chris?
No, not at this time. We're just
Okay.
waiting at this point for information on SIPA. We have a number of feelers out to folks, so hopefully we'll get some information for next month.
Right. We have had good input from those committee members. And we're at the point now where we're sitting back and waiting to see some bids and see who's out there. That also hinges somewhat upon what we decide to do with respect to SIPA and filtering on our computers. If we decided we weren't going to adopt SIPA, then the whole E-rate aspect is no longer viable, and we'd be back to the drawing boards again and spending more money. So I think with that in mind, let's see, we've talked about the building envelope project already in the director's report. And any questions on the building project that we haven't already addressed? Okay, so let's skip on to the issue of SIPA and our willingness to adopt or reject the idea of compliance with SIPA. I put together just a kind of a brain dump on paper and sent it out to you this afternoon on what it's all about. We have discussed it at least a couple of times before, but the crux of the issue is that if we adopt SIPA, which requires us to filter images from minors that might be harmful, then we must, excuse me, let me back up a ways. In order to, okay, then we run afoul of the First Amendment and really our intellectual freedoms. I guess this is what I was trying to say. I didn't get that out very well. So it's a philosophical matter at this point. If you look at the benefits and costs involved, cost in dollars and cents, we can't identify at this point unless Chris has more to add to that tonight. But we have the cost of purchasing a license to some filtering software and installing that on our network or on our individual computers. I'm not sure the technical side of how that works. And E-rate will not pay for that. We also have to have a public forum at some point. I think that sounds much more threatening than perhaps it really is, but it's possible that we might face criticism from the public for actually doing a little bit of censorship. That is philosophically against what the ALA would have us do. They don't believe in any form of censorship. But on the other hand, they also do regard that E-rate financing is an important thing in many library projects. So they do have some guidelines that they've issued on ways that we can mitigate the censorship aspect of what we might do, which I've tried to list down below in the bottom paragraph of my handout to you. The benefit is $17,200 in our pocket that we would normally have to pay, but the cost would be discounted by theoretically that amount of money. So that's a huge savings in dollars and cents, which are precious. Are there any questions on any of the things that I've put on paper here or aspects of SIPA that you're not clear upon?
Just a quick question. In our area, similar sized libraries, who has it or looking into it for the same program?
Currently, very few libraries in Massachusetts take advantage of E-rate, but in Rhode Island, Pawtucket does have it, and Boston Public does have it, but they're not similar in size to us at all.
Do you have any feedback from them saying, were there any concerns from the public or ALA or somebody objecting to this program?
Well, the reason that they haven't put it in is the SIPA filtering, at least, you know, the folks that I've spoken to say in the sales consortium. But I think that is starting to change. And Massachusetts is actually one of the few states where folks are not using the E-rates aggressively as they are in the rest of the country. I think once folks started having their own devices, it did kind of open things up a little bit because we do not have to filter our Wi-Fi. So anyone that's coming in with their own device,
yeah,
can still have access to unfiltered internet. And also any adult can ask us at will to turn off the filter. So it's really only minors that would be restricted by this rule. And they are already restricted by this rule in the schools.
Okay.
Attleboro Public Schools is using E-rates and does filter all of its internet. So then we sort of would be on par with what's happening at the school,
Okay.
especially if we can find a way that we can turn it on and off, which is one of the features we're hoping to identify, which we're told exists, but we haven't actually found out if that's true.
I mean, we can piggyback on the school department saying that, well, we are just protecting children, not anybody else. So it's just.
Correct.
No.
Did you have something, Trish?
Yes, but our patrons could go to another library and have full access.
That's true too. Mhm. Honestly, I mean, most of the people that are using our internet, especially now, are filling out job applications or writing letters. We honestly have very few people just browsing the internet. So I mean, I would think for the majority of people using the service, you know, the inability to see visually obscene materials is not going to impact, you know, the reason why they're actually on the computers using.
I would add that E-rate is designed for upgrades to your internet access as well as telecommunications. Specifically, that's why they exist, because they want us to be, you know, technologically sound in this area. It's clearly something that is one of our biggest faults at this point that we need to correct. It's one of our highest priorities. And it costs money. It's going to cost us in the 30,000s or perhaps even more. And to the extent that we can knock off a significant piece of that cost, to me is extremely valuable. And particularly where I don't see a huge impact on our patrons. If an adult wants us to turn the filter off, no questions asked. We don't have to have a reason except that they request it. So that's not a very big impact. It's even possible with the right software to have smart cards and things of this nature that contain your date of birth that you can utilize. And maybe it's in your library card right now, so that you can be, as you enter the internet, given a prompt that says, do you want to disable the filtering system or proceed without disabling it? So it's entirely possible that we could even take the library staff person out of the process completely, and a person can do it on their own at their workstation. So I don't see a huge impact.
Okay.
It also applies only to images. It doesn't apply to material text, for example. It applies to images that are felt to be pornographic or have to do with child pornography or what else am I leaving out there? Obscene, you know, definitions, I suppose, come into play at some point, but determined to be harmful or obscene. Doesn't have to do with hate sites or things of that nature, which I think could be quite harmful in another way. So those are my feelings anyway. But we do need to make a decision on this. We don't have to make a decision to hire a company X today, but we need, in order to go forward with our E-rate application, we have to say, yes, sometime in the next year, we are open to, or we will adopt a filtering system to allow us to participate in E-rate. That's what's on the table.
Let's go around and get the feeling from everybody, so that, you know, when we start talking about it in a broader sense, then the city and everybody that comes in play knows what we're doing, instead of like a soft discussion for everybody to get into the loop.
I agree. Linda, do you have any?
Yeah, I was
comment?
actually going to make a comment that I think the impact basically is more positive than negative. I think just the incentive, the financial incentive certainly overrides the negatives at this point in time. And so I would be at this point inclined, I think, to agree to go forward with this.
I agree.
Tricia, what are your thoughts? I'm going across the screen, so I'm not, that's the order I'm going in. Tricia,
I would agree with Linda. I'm really with the ALA, but I feel that it's, we have to have it somehow. So having some is better than having none. We may not even be able to afford it any other way. So I'm in favor.
okay, Beth,
Yeah, I agree with what everyone's saying.
Eileen,
Yeah, I agree with it. I think it's a win-win for us. I don't, and I can't imagine a parent not wanting that. So I don't think we'll get any backlash.
all right. Toby, you're working in an environment, excuse me, not living, but working in an environment where E-rate is being used, and there must be some kind of filtering. Has this impacted anything in your work environment?
No, not really. I don't think any kids or parents even notice. Philosophically, I'm kind of opposed to tying funding to censorship. It feels a little dirty to me. You can have us have this conversation, but I agree that the impact seems more beneficial than the problems. Although I don't like saying it out loud.
I feel your pain. Agreed. Mahesh?
I'm in for it. We need to go ahead and do it.
Okay. Judy?
Yes, I'm totally in.
Diane?
The only concern I had was about images. Was it only images? And you answered that question earlier. So I can't see any reason not to go along with it.
Okay. All right, well then, is it safe to say that we can give Chris the green light to proceed with her E-rate application when it's ready?
Yes.
All right. There's your story. There's your answer, Chris. It will require from here on that I will take it upon myself, working with Chris, to make sure we have a systematic way of addressing how we get filtering, what it's going to cost, and who are the possible vendors that we might need to use. May also have implications for whoever is managing our new network once we go live with our new technology. So anyway, I will take the responsibility to make sure that we're focusing in on it, so that by the time we get our E-rate, we can say, yes, we will comply in fiscal year 2021.
And we do have a full year to be in compliance.
Right.
So we have until the end of June, not that we would wait that long, but we can start the cabling, get all the other stuff going, as long as the SIPA filtering is in place by June of 2022.
Agreed. Okay, very good. Is there any more on that subject before we move on? Very good. Well, let's move on to new business. Chris, you want to tell us about tutor.com, or is it BrainFuse?
It's actually BrainFuse that we're looking at. We were looking at both, but tutor.com was much more costly and didn't really offer much better service or time period. They both offer, I think it's 9 hours per day of live tutoring. And BrainFuse does indicate, I did send you guys a separate email, but they do indicate that they do follow the state curriculum. So when they are working with students, they do follow whatever the Massachusetts curriculums are. If students have general questions on different types of topics, on how to do different things, or science, or whatever the topic may be. So, I mean, at this point, we're still reviewing it. And I know we have a number of educators on the phone. We also have a number of trustees that have students in their lives, whether they're children or grandchildren. So I just kind of wanted to introduce you to the product. I sent you the trial information if you have a chance to log in and look around a little bit. I've also shared it with a couple folks from Attleboro Public Schools and the Literacy Center. We were thinking about this over a year ago and kind of put it on the back burner. And now with all of the remote learning, we thought it might be a good time to rethink it again for families that might be struggling. It's one more way to support not only the student, but maybe the parents who are having difficulty with concepts. But it's not cheap. So before we go too far down the path of saying we wanted it, I kind of wanted to feel out the board to see if it's something that you would consider funding, perhaps with Chirenza funds or whatever other funds you think are appropriate. But we won't really be making a decision to proceed tonight. I'm just trying to get an idea if at the end of all of us looking at the product, if everyone's in agreement that it's something that would be valuable to offer to the community, if there would be a way that we could fund it, at least for this initial year. And then we would look at the usage to determine if we were going to try to renew it. And if we were going to try to renew it, then we would likely look for grant funds for a future year.
I only looked at it quickly prior to the meeting. And the one thing I noticed, and maybe I didn't see it quite as in detail, but it seemed like the Vet Now and the Job Now were very, very, very similar. I mean, when they listed the things that they did, it almost seemed to be almost the same program. But like I said, I didn't have a lot of time, so I didn't really look closely at it, but that was the one thing I noticed.
Yeah, they're actually just kind of bundling it in right now at a pretty cheap rate. So we really were looking mostly at the tutoring option, but they were going to throw in both the Vet Now and the Job Now. I think the distinction with the Vet Now, from what I read, was that the folks that actually help people that use the service are all veterans, and that they do have an understanding of VA services and can assist folks who are looking for VA benefits as well.
Okay.
But I guess a lot of the job stuff is very similar, but maybe they just can help people better target their resumes because they have that military background.
But between the budget and the Chirenza fund, you and I can brainstorm offline about how to pay for it once we know more about where we want to go. But it certainly is a perfect use for Chirenza funds. So I'll throw that out there.
I spent about half an hour or so looking at it after you sent it, Chris, and I agree. I think this is like this year, it seems more important to do. I think that the school should benefit from knowing that you guys had this and promoting it. And given the unemployment in the area, I think having like the Jobs Now would be very beneficial. So I would be for it. And, we'll see what the use is and see if we need to do it next year. But I think it would be something that's worth doing this year.
I would love to, if you wouldn't mind. I know you have, students living at home with you. Like if you just logged in and just saw what you thought of the actual tutor. I felt funny to just like reach out to a tutor and ask a question, as kind of a fake student. But since some of you actually have students, I would really be curious to get like real feedback on what you thought of the interaction. Like even just take a homework question, maybe they know the answer, but just see what you thought of how the tutor approached it. You know, interesting to get that feedback. To see if
Okay,
it's really
yeah, there were no
valuable.
tutors today because of the
Right, because
holiday.
the holiday.
So I didn't try that aspect of it, but I will try to take care of it the next couple of days or whatever.
Great, thank you.
Oh,
Just then the phone rang.
That's mine. It's my phone.
Charlie?
Okay. Well, let's get back to the agenda. Any more questions regarding Brain Fuse? We're going to call it by the right name. Brain Fuse, I guess, was preferable over tutor.com. So,
I have a question.
yes.
How soon would that would be available for this school year? Remainder of the
Yes,
school?
once you order it, it's up and running within the month. They have a
'Cause-
very quick turnaround.
I mean, with everybody having 2 days in school, 2 days out of school, I think this year it would be really, really appreciated in the community and needed because of not being in person all the time in school. So the kids could probably benefit from it and the parents.
Sounds
And
ideal.
we did reach out to the schools in particular, you know, I mentioned Lori Regan because, I mean, the sales rep did mention that some schools weren't in favor. So I did want to make sure that the Attleboro Public Schools as a whole were in favor of it. So we did send it out to a few folks there to just give us some feedback. Like I would imagine if they were really opposed, we would have already heard, like they would say, no, don't do this. But I didn't want to proceed without getting their input because it's really their, majority of students would be their students that would be using it.
And Chris, did they answer you?
They said, thank you very much for sending it. I'm going to look more into it, but like nobody said, I think this is a terrible idea. So I'm thinking that at least philosophically, they're not opposed to it. I just wanted to make sure that they didn't felt like it conflicted with,
Yeah.
okay, how they wanted it. Because these two tutors are very well vetted and they are there to help the students learn, not just do their homework. So any student who thinks that they're just going to log on and get all the answers, it doesn't work that way. So, I mean, that would be the only thing I would think that perhaps the school district might be opposed to is kids won't be doing their own stuff. They'll just be, getting all their questions answered online. But I do think a lot of these kids need help, and the parents, especially like you mentioned this year, could use the support. It's one more way to get the support. And even the teachers who are trying to do things remotely, how many hours do they have in a day? So to have one other, resource that people can reach out to, it seemed like a good thing. Worcester did just add it in Massachusetts. And I think he mentioned a few others that have added in Massachusetts. And it's something we had where I worked at Great Neck. So I'm familiar with it. It's a good product. It's been around a long time. It's not something that's just new on the street trying to take advantage of difficult times.
Does it require any staff training?
No training. In fact, we're all just looking at it. All we really have to do is what we normally do with a database is, make sure it's accessible from our website. Carrie fills out a form with all of our, you need a library card, to access it normally. And make sure we market it, let people know, get it out to the schools. And parents, put it in all of our different ways that we get information out so that people use it. Because it's a flat fee. It's not like Canopy where we pay per uses. It's, we pay the same price whether one person uses it or, 1,000 people use it. So our goal would be to try and get people to use it.
Nash?
Yeah, I think if you want to buy this product, then let's do it soon because of a lot of parents are struggling with this, trying to keep their children
Right.
engaged. And then we can come back next year and reassess again. But if you want to do it, let's do it soon.
I agree.
So would you think if, staff and the school district comes back and everybody says, great idea, we should just proceed? And then between, Charlie and you, Mash, and myself, you'll let Carol know how we pay for it? Does that sound fair? Or, I mean, and normally I don't know if I would do the job now in the vet now, but it is a tough time for folks, and the bundle, if you looked at the pricing, it's not that much more to add all three. So I thought it might be a nice package to just go with all three of them. It's $5,500 for all three products for a year. And like I said, we'll see what usage is. And now we have a new veterans agent in the city. It might be something that would be helpful to him too. Once he gets familiar with it, he can, tell folks how to use it, et cetera.
I mean, we can bring all the different departments like veteran department and the literacy center and teachers and say, listen, we're going to do this for you. Just come aboard, and I think it'll pick up nicely.
Right. I agree.
Well, it sounds like you have a mandate, Chris. So let's figure out how to pay for it. And we defer to your.
Great. And like I said, I'd love to hear your feedback. So if you have a chance to play around a little more, go out there and, try some test questions. I did just some testing myself, just send it your email directly to me, and that'll be helpful for our review process.
Okay.
All right, very good. Is there any more old business that we did not bring up? Any new business?
I have one question. When I went to the library the other day, Chris, and you were sitting there at the front door, I thought to myself, what a waste. At one point in time, did you mention something about potentially being able to get some help from City Hall or
I asked, and we were turned down for our request because they were no longer using the part-time staff, and they are doing all the check-ins at their individual workstations. But I don't think that would really work for our building, because the people at their individual workstations are just too busy doing their individual work. And we're trying to keep the building as secure as possible. So we are toying with going with just one person, but it's kind of a lot to do all the reminders and get the contact tracing information for one person. So we did cut back from 3 to 2, but yeah, it is a waste. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can volunteers be used as well, or would you really feel uncomfortable that perhaps that might not be such a good thing? You want to keep it more or less under control?
We were afraid of the consistency, because it's hard enough with everybody testing out now with COVID. And then if we were going to have volunteers, and no offense, because I'm a senior myself practically, but a lot of our volunteers are seniors and they're kind of the high risk category. Do you really want to have them being the ones that are interacting that closely? I mean, a staff member would have to do, I think, the contract tracing part, just because the personal information, I'd feel more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But we could theoretically have a volunteer at the front door reminding people. But we need to make sure we have a volunteer 6 hours a day, with 3-hour shifts, and that then becomes a job in and of itself.
Yeah. Okay.
And if somebody doesn't show up, so I mean, we did toy with using like the scene. That's what the city said. Use your senior tax volunteers. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, they're very dependable, reliable, but it's also, I don't know if it's something you want to ask somebody to do. It's I don't know, we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. Right
Yeah. Okay. I was curious.
I know we all try to take turns, so that people only have one shift of some sort every day. So whether they're doing the check-in, or they're doing the sign-in, or they're doing circulation, or they're doing reference, but there are some days where staff has to do both, and they have that 1 hour gap running in between. It gets a little hectic.
Okay.
All right. Any other new business items? Anything else anybody wants to say?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Great. Our next meeting is December 9th at the usual time. So we look forward to seeing you then. Stay healthy, stay well, Be safe, and we look forward to seeing you in December. Meeting adjourned. Thanks for a
Thank
good
you.
meeting, people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Nate.
Right.